The point is that Joe Biden is now completely and entirely deflecting blame for the crisis before us that has been accelerated by the US's involvement in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It really, I think, speaks to how the US's role has actually been minimized here. The US, a lot of people, even YouTube, a lot of places, is Twitter. If you say the wrong thing on this issue, you're censored. So if you say something like, well, the United States has a lot to do, if not is the primary problem in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, then you're seen as minimizing the suffering of Ukrainians, as being an agent of Russia, spreading Russian misinformation. But the truth is that in December, the Biden administration had a perfect opportunity to create some kind of foreign policy legacy, which I'm unsure if Biden will have any legacy moment. Every president has them. I'm not sure he's going to have one here because all they did was throw gasoline onto what was, at that time, a steadily growing flame, uh, completely ignoring Russia's concerns, basically saying, we're not going to speak to Russia in any way that could be called diplomacy. We're just going to talk down to them. They're wrong. Of course, we're not going to even think about ceasing NATO expansion. We're going to continue on that path. And then this is what has happened. We've had more than a month of war where Russia is trying to now assert its demands, not just ask for them. It is asserting them, and it is saying we're going to protect Donbass as part of that overall political project. So really, the war started with the United States. We know that in 2014 with the coup. Even before that, there was the 2004 Orange Revolution that the United States had a huge hand in. The United States has been meddling in this region for years upon decades, right? From the Soviet Union period to the post-Soviet Union period. The United States' hands are all over this conflict. But Joe Biden, thinking that this will help him, has said, no, it's actually Putin. It's actually COVID that's causing all of these problems. But people don't seem to agree with that because most people in all of these polls are saying actually Biden is mostly responsible for everything that's going on. And that makes perfect sense because Biden is the president of the United States. Generally, presidents of the United States do, whether, whatever your political, some people think that presidents are kind of powerless people, but generally presidents, especially in moments of crises, are judged the harshest, whether for the good or for the bad. With the Bush got a huge public relations boost, a huge public favorability boost when he waged the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan after the war on terror, because the spotlight was on him. There was this crisis, however manufactured, that allowed for that to happen. Now we have another kind of crisis that's mainly manufactured, doesn't even have to exist if there was any interest in peace on the part of the American empire. But now we're in this moment where, unlike in the past, in these past, especially Obama's wars, unlike Obama's interventions, Biden's decision to kind of throw gasoline onto this fire has blown back big time. It has caused significant uh, uh, change in the economic situation for a lot of people, which was already bad, and thus put the spotlight onto him, which for this whole administration, he has not wanted it. He campaigned to get in to beat Bernie Sanders, and he's tried ever since to just be the establishment candidate, the establishment president, and to do everything you said he would, to not do anything he said he would do, and to get away with it based on the fact that he replaced Donald Trump and that we're supposed to sigh a breath of relief because of that. But now that's all over. People are not really thinking about that anymore, except the most hysterical Democrats, the most harebrained Democrats. No one else is thinking about Donald Trump right now. Joe Biden's president. There's a war going on, and everything is changing because of it. And people are not happy, especially working people are not happy that they have to think about, well, can I travel to work, or am I going to go homeless because there's a conflict over there and we're supposed to blame Putin for that.
Yeah, I was looking at my phone. I was trying to find the tweet you were referring to, and I did. And this was from Biden yesterday. And he says, quote, "I know that families are still struggling with higher prices. I grew up in a family where if the price of gas went up, we felt it. Let's be absolutely clear about why prices are high right now. COVID and Vladimir Putin," unquote. So, and it's funny, and people have noticed during his campaign, he talked about Trump blaming other people. And when I'm president, I'll take responsibility and so forth. But this is a losing message. By any political standard, to blame a foreign leader because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. So yeah, they hope to still run against Trump. Trump's gone for a year now. Nothing happening now has anything to do with it. And if you want to, let's talk about COVID for a moment. 1 million people dead because of COVID, and more under Biden than under Trump. As bad as Trump did, Biden has done worse by every measure. So he has failed. He's failed politically, and he and Democrats are going to pay the price. So we see this increasingly unhinged propaganda from Democrats, because that's all they have. All they have is to try to blame Putin or something, anything other than Biden himself and what he has done as the president. And we're going to see more and more suffering by this futile attempt to destroy the Russian economy. Food shortages, price increases. It's asking countries to damage themselves, damage their own economy by telling them to sanction Russia. And we've seen in these votes at the UN, there were two: one condemning Russia's military action, the second removing Russia from the Human Rights Council. They lost those votes. There were more no votes and abstentions. And the second time, with the Human Rights Council vote, there were a lot more abstentions. And abstentions are, in effect, a no vote. Countries don't want to say no and risk the wrath of the United States, but they're not on board either. And so the global South nations are speaking up, and they are saying that they do not want to be a part of this sanctions regime, which is hurting them. And sanctions in general, U.S. sanctions have done so much damage around the world, so they don't want more of that. Antony Blinken, the incompetent Secretary of State, was in Panama trying to pressure the Panamanians into closing the Panama Canal to Russian ships. And when the U.S. turned the canal zone over to Panama, their part of the treaty said that Panama would remain neutral. So they're asking Panama to break their own the treaty that they signed with the U.S. So that's all they have, is to try to pressure other people to act against their interests. And it will be interesting to see how this plays out in NATO nations like Germany, how it will play out in France with an upcoming election. Macron is expected to win, but Marine Le Pen, a perennial candidate, actually her father was as well, right wing on some issues on immigration, racist narratives. But she also says that France should not be a member of NATO's military apparatus, and she's opposed to these sanctions. So we'll see, when people have an opportunity to speak up, whether they're going to go along with this, whether they're going to go along with suffering for the sake of NATO. And one of the other reasons Biden is suffering politically is all this money going to Ukraine, billions of dollars in a couple months' time. We're told we can't afford the child tax credit, and Build Back Better was too much. And, the Democrats do their good cop, bad cop. Well, we wanted to pass it. It's Manchin and Sinema. They're the evil actors here. The rest of us want it, which I don't believe. You know, people aren't stupid. They know that their money is going to this other country, and people ask, well, what is the benefit to me of this, you know, Ukrainian government staying in power, with the neo-Nazi groups having a predominant role in the military? So people try to say the president's Jewish, and you know, a small percent of the population votes right wing, but the right wing have the power. And thanks to the US and the 2014 coup, which created this, or accentuated the crisis that's been going on since the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 90s.